So, Congressman, let me start things off, and I'd like to talk. I was reading the materials, and I see that you're very interested in building that bridge between Silicon Valley and the Salinas Valley. And I wonder if you might talk. We've had people here from the Central Valley. We haven't heard from anyone from your area yet, even though I know, because I'm from the Midwest, I know that Monterey County's got a bigger agricultural industry than all of Nebraska. So it's a big, big area just south of us. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how we might build that bridge.
Yeah, first of all, let me thank you, Roger. I appreciate this opportunity to be here to talk about something that I feel is basically the future. And it's something that agriculture needs ASAP in the sense that this issue of going into AgTech is not just it's not just an issue, it's an emergency right now, especially down in Salinas in the Monterey County area, where we have what we have down there, rather than the Central Valley, rather than out in North Dakota where my wife's from. We have specialty crops. We have more crops, more different types of crops in my district than any other single state. You go to your grocery shelves, you go to the local Safeway, that's what the Salinas Valley looks like. You name it, we got it. You name it, we grow it. Now, because we have specialty crops, those crops, for the most part, they go from literally the field to the shelves, right into my two daughters' mouths. And so what that means is that you need a labor force for those crops. You need the human sense to know which types of product are going to be aesthetically pleasing, are going to be safe to eat to the consumer, because it's that quick from the fields to the shelves to our mouths. And so right now, with the immigration issue that's going on, the immigration emergency that's going on, I believe that it's time to start looking to other venues. It's time to start looking to Silicon Valley in order to get to the point where we will be replacing workers with machines, especially when it comes to the specialty crops.
Okay, well, you said a mouthful. You covered a lot of topics there, so let's maybe drill down on these one by one. And, one of the things I've discovered about agriculture since I've gotten, and by the way, the North Dakota, that's how we know each other, by the way, because I'm from North Dakota also, so we always bring a little Midwest to California when we can. Mechanization, you mentioned the labor issue, and from where I sit, it seems to me that that's not only a problem, but it's also an opportunity for Silicon Valley and for companies that are building labor-saving devices. And I wonder if Congress sees it the same way, and if there's a public policy issue here, and maybe I'm a dreamer, I like to think there's a technology solution for most problems. Is there a technology solution for the labor problem?
Well, look, that's why I believe we're all here. That's why we need to be here, because there has to be. It was funny. I was fortunate enough to, yes, grow up on a walnut farm, but a small one. But two, my education in agriculture came from something that all of you can take, and that's an ag knowledge class that I took through the Santa Cruz County Farm Bureau. They had them in Salinas, in Monterey County. I know Santa Cruz is now working with Santa Clara and San Benito County to have it, and anybody can take it. And I took that about 3 years ago. And let me tell you, during that time, we were undergoing what? A pretty severe drought. And you thought, every grower that you would talk to, you'd think, what's the number one issue? You would think it would be the drought and water. Not a chance. Every single grower that I've talked to ever since has always said that the number one issue for them is labor, getting people to help them pick their crops. And the problem is that we're seeing a number of changes when it comes to immigration. You're seeing a socioeconomic change in Mexico. More people are staying in Mexico to do the jobs down there. There are more farms that were here that have moved to Mexico, partly because of the regulations and protections that have been imposed by the state. And so they're moving their operations down there, so the farm jobs are down there. Then obviously you're seeing the rhetoric throughout the campaign, through this administration, you're seeing the anti-immigration executive orders come through. And so you're seeing a slowdown in people coming here wanting to work the fields. And so what are we going to do? How are we going to replace them? And I do believe that it's a prime opportunity now for Silicon Valley to step in and be a part of that. And they've started that down in Salinas Valley with a number of AgTech conferences, be it at Hartnell Junior College, the Forbes AgTech Summit, the Steinbach Innovation Cluster. Private companies are starting to do that. I believe it's my responsibility as a U.S. representative of that area on the Ag Committee to be the #1 promoter of AgTech. And I can go into that if you'd like.
Okay, we'll circle back to that. I've got about 5 main things I want to make sure we hit. And so this is a good lead in. So on the Ag Committee, I know you deal with this issue a lot. It comes up a lot, and it has to do with broadband access. And just to sort of frame the issue for you here, by broadband, I don't have to tell this crowd, I'm sure, what we mean is internet, not dial-up access in rural areas. And traditionally, federal funding, loan guarantees, Department of Agriculture funding, anything that supports broadband has been based on a number of people in rural areas. And now, I mean, if you saw TJ's presentation, I mean, he's got one of those little monitors on every single vine, right? So it seems to me that the way broadband access is going to be encouraged is going to have to change pretty dramatically. Anything on the Ag Committee dealing with this issue?
Right now, no. Okay? Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of congressional members, Democrats and Republicans, who are talking about rural broadband. People throughout this country understand and realize that that is an issue and something that can be addressed. But from what I've seen, it's going to be addressed not in the Ag Committee. It's going to be addressed in an infrastructure bill. And that's where you have to look at it. And that's where it's going to come from in order to get federal funding for investments in that area. The Ag Committee right now that I'm on, we are focused on the 2018 Farm Bill. So we're focused on the number of aspects of that Farm Bill and where that comes in. Now, the way that can get tied in, though, is what I would like to interject into the Farm Bill is a specialty crop research initiative. Now, in the 2014 Farm Bill, they had a specialty crop research initiative for pest and disease control. I would like to put one in for ag technology. And I'm actually working with Republican Congressman Rodney Davis from Illinois, who chairs the research subcommittee. And he and I have agreed to start up an AgTech caucus in order to promote this specialty crop research initiative. And so we're going to be working on that, and I look forward to working with all of you and to hearing from all of you in promoting AgTech and getting that into the Farm Bill as well.
Let's talk about the Farm Bill for a minute. So the way this works is that every 4 years or so, 5 years or so, we get a new Farm Bill in Congress, and it covers a lot of things, right? It covers health, USDA. But in particular, one thing that's kind of been a thorn in the side of California farmers is, you mentioned the word specialty crops. That's what we grow mostly here in California. The other side of that is commodity crops. It's what they grow out in the Midwest where I'm from. And it seems like way more money gets allocated to commodity crops and specialty crops, even though it's a very big market. It's a very high value crop. First of all, is that true, what I just said? And secondly, is there any possibility that might change?
Well, the answers are both yes to both those questions. Look, I think what people don't realize is what the Farm Bill consists of. And the next one's coming up in 2018, so that's what we're working on right now. Now, 80% of the Farm Bill goes to one area, and everybody besides Tom Stencil, who's here, can try to answer this, because I know Tom knows the answer of United Fresh. Does anybody know what that 80% of the Farm Bill goes to? Nutrition. Correct. Thank you. That's food stamps, the SNAP program. 80% of it goes to that. The majority of the remaining 20% goes to, you're right, commodities, conservation, crop insurance. Now, sure, we have a little bit of conservation out here with the water going into that, but we do not have that many commodity crops. And my growers on the Central Coast, you guys have crop insurance? No, they don't have it. They don't have they don't deal with commodities. They don't deal with crop insurance. It's a very self-sufficient, self-funded, a lot of money, a lot of products that go into it. And so it makes me proud when I talk to my family back in North Dakota and let them know what we do out here, kind of rub it in a little bit, that we don't need the help from the federal government to a certain extent, at least when it comes to commodities. But it also makes me proud to talk to the other representatives on the Ag Committee. And every chance I get, I let them know that I represent the salad bowl of the world. But I also say, and this is when their ears perk up, it's really interesting. When I talk about Salinas Valley kind of being in the shadow of Silicon Valley, that's when I get them listening. They're ready. They're primed, I believe, for a technology injection into our agriculture. Because I believe that, look, they deal with labor issues as well. North Carolina is the #1 state for H-2A visas, not California. California, I think, is 3rd or 4th. I think it goes North Carolina, maybe Florida, and then California is back there. So there are crops, there are states throughout our country that understand these labor issues. They understand that it's time to start pivoting into mechanization. It's funny, and one thing I know, if I may, when I would go out into the fields and I would see machinery there in the fields, and if you do this, be sure to ask the grower, always ask the grower, where's that machinery made? And I'm telling you, inevitably, it's from Europe, from Netherlands, from Spain. Why? Because they've had to deal with the labor shortages. They've had to deal with high-priced labor. And so they have mechanized ahead of us. The problem is that those machines, they can't handle the girth of a U.S. field. We're bigger, we work them harder, and so they break down quite a bit. And so that kind of makes them a little too expensive and unreasonable for our growers to invest in most of them right now. I believe it needs to happen right here. I think it can happen right here. Yes, with federal government, but also with help from private companies up here in Silicon Valley.
Let's pause on the labor thing just for another minute.
Let me tell you, it's hard to pause on that. And I can't stress that enough. And you talk to every grower. That is the #1 issue. People, like I said, I cannot stress enough. It is a real emergency right now. Farmers are letting crops grow fallow. They're letting these crops worth millions of dollars just sit in their fields because they don't have the labor force to help pick their crops. So I apologize that I'm bringing it up, but I really think that people got to know that this is an emergency at this point.
So before we leave that, again, since you are in the seat of power, do you, and I have to be a little careful here, but do you see that situation changing anytime soon? Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? And especially if I'm a robotics company, am I doubling down on my bet, or am I thinking, well, it all might change in the next year or two?
Look, it is tough right now. It's tough because you do see a lot of rhetoric coming out of the administration, and a lot of anti-immigration rhetoric coming out of the immigration. And that's making immigration reform tougher. But fortunately, there are a few members of Congress and the Senate who are starting to understand how important this issue is and are starting to put forward legislation. Look, I was at an event where there were a bunch of growers up there, and this one farmer stood up and he said, "It's Congress's fault. You guys have failed to do anything since 1986. That's the last time we passed immigration reform." And my response was, "You're right. You're right. We had it in 2013. The U.S. Senate passed comprehensive immigration reform in 2013, the Senate Bill 744, where you hear about that Gang of Eight, that dealt with a change in the visa reform issue. It dealt with border security. It dealt with a pathway to citizenship. And the fourth aspect of it, which I think demonstrates the compromise behind it, was an investment in youth jobs, which I could see people from other non-agriculture areas wanting. But that was it. And it passed the Senate, if you can believe that. But when it got to Congress, the Speaker of the House did not put it forward for a vote. And so that's why we're left with the situation we are in. and it's unfortunate. But I'm actually working with Senator Dianne Feinstein. She put forward a bill, on Friday to work with a blue visa type of a bill that provides a blue visa for agriculture workers. Basically making sure that the workers we have here, we can keep them here and possibly provide them a pathway to legal residency and ultimately citizenship. And then other Congress members are coming up with their own bills as well. So the more we talk about it, the more we bang on our representatives and our president about immigration, let them know that it is an issue. I mean, a lot of the growers voted for President Trump. I tell them, you need to let President Trump know that stop the rhetoric and start doing something to help you out with immigration reform.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for that. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. You mentioned in your remarks the Acknowledge program. I'm actually going through that myself right now. And one of the things that I learned in Acknowledge is, like you say, Monterey County is the salad bowl of the world. And there is in California this real healthy, nutrition, healthy eating kind of movement. In the schools in Salinas, I noticed they bring in salad bars, to compete with the French fries. And I'm just wondering, is there anything like that going on? And we believe, here in Northern California, we believe in healthy eating. It's great that we're in California where we've got healthy crops to eat. But is there anything going on at the federal level, or is there any sort of similar movement that could take this idea throughout the country?
Yeah, what Roger's talking about is that there's a program down in Monterey, in Monterey County, where the growers have donated over 100 salad bars to local schools. It's phenomenal. And when I was talking about it, and I said, we're not just going to be known as the salad bowl of the world, we're going to be known as the salad bar of the world. And it's a great thing, because what we've realized is that a lot of the people who are picking the crops, who are helping harvest the crops, are not eating the produce that they were picking. And a way to help them eat healthier is to get through their kids. And the way you do that is introduce salad bars in schools, and it's actually working. And part of the SNAP program is a program called FINI, F-I-N-I. And what that is it's promoting nutrition in the SNAP program. And so that's one way that they're starting to do it, and one way that we'll continue to do it. But I mean, I think, you look everywhere, like you said, people are eating healthier. There's no doubt about that. And we need to continue to encourage them. And it starts with our kids. I mean, my daughter comes home and she makes a fruit smoothie. I mean, I would go for the Frosted Flakes when I was a kid. Now they're going for fruit smoothies. And that's the attitude that we're seeing change. And that's what we want to continue. And I think we can continue to do it by just talking about it.
Absolutely. By the way, we have Driscoll's strawberries sitting out in the lobby. They're right next to the potato chips, so choose wisely. I'd like to open it up and hear some questions from the audience, see if you've got some questions for the Congressman. And while you're thinking about that, maybe I'll give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about Salinas and about that bridge. What is the benefit for a Silicon Valley tech startup to have a presence down in Salinas area?
Yeah, no, look, I think the benefit goes to the purpose of this symposium here today, and that's getting people in Silicon Valley more in tune with what's going on, not just in Salinas Valley, but in the Central Valley, in the Midwest. I've talked to a lot of farmers, and about AgTech. And what they've said is that, people in Silicon Valley are providing a lot of products. There's no doubt about it. But he said the one thing that's missing is that sometimes they provide these products without actually knowing what the farmer needs. And so when you can actually get out there, get in the fields, talk to people who are in the fields. Let me tell you, that's the most beneficial thing. And you get to know them, you get to know their needs, and when it's not just, these types of events, which I think promote that. And that's why I'm so glad that there are events down, not in Salinas Valley, there's this event here. The more these types of events, the more people start talking, the stronger that bridge between Silicon and Salinas Valley it will be.
Well, we definitely believe in that. In fact, I think my friend John Hartnett is someplace in the audience who is instrumental in the Steinbeck Center.
Innovation Cluster.
Yep.
Definitely, yeah. He's been great. He and Dennis Donahue have done a lot of good work down there in promoting a lot of private investment in there. And it makes me ashamed because I believe it's time for the federal government to step up in that area as well. But I look forward. I've talked to Dennis last week, and we talked about working together on that as well.
Question.
Congressman, animal factory farming is such a huge source of global warming. In fact, more than 50%, more than all transportation put together. That being the case, why is there such a huge subsidy to the beef industry and the dairy industry, given that more than half of global warming is coming from there?
Well, look, I mean, obviously that issue has come up, at least it's been made known and become popular recently. And it definitely is one that people in Washington, D.C. are talking about as well as providing, making sure that the dairy farmers are covered in the Farm Bill. They're talking about it. And as you know, policy can be slow to create, obviously. But I can assure you that people are talking about it both from the environmentalist side and from the farming side. And hopefully they'll reach a solution.
Where do you stand on it?
Well, look, I mean, when it comes to, our dairy products, I feel they're very important. But at the same time, our farmers, they're stewards of the land. Okay, they care about the land. They have to care about the earth. They have to care about the air. They have to care about the water. That's their success. So it's not like they're just growing to grow in a complete disregard for the land. Not at all. Our growers, especially the growers that I meet, and especially the growers in the Salinas Valley, they care about this land. And they're the first to basically worry about the environment. They need that environment for their economy. So they're working on it, trust me. And the more we talk to them, the more I think we'll develop a policy where hopefully we can come to an agreement on that.
Question in the back.
Coming down here. I've been driving through the Salinas Valley, particularly down on south of the 101, and I've noticed a change in the farms. You'll notice that there's a lot of farms with fencing where you can't see through and high barbed wire. And it's my understanding that those are the cannabis farmers that are moving in on the dilapidated cut flowers, and I was wondering if you could just speak to that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess in Monterey County, in order to have a marijuana farm, you have to grow it in greenhouses. So you are correct that in the greenhouses that you're seeing down there, a significant amount are being bought up by marijuana farming investors at this point. And that's where, you have discussions between, you make sure that it's done right. I mean, we live in California, and that's going to get bigger. Okay, we've seen it. The problem is having to work out with the federal issues and the federal laws and the FDIC and the banking. And that's definitely a worry with the marijuana growers that I've talked to. But, I haven't heard, the good thing is that Salinas Valley is going to be very fertile, and it is the place that feeds the world. And so I do not see marijuana overtaking our specialty crops, especially in the Salinas Valley, because that land's so expensive, because it's so important, and the crops are so important to feed the world.
How about that? I understand. We live, as a lawyer, I can tell you we live in just a never land when it comes to cannabis. It's legalized in 13 states, but still a Schedule C drug for federal purposes. And it doesn't look to me like that's going to change anytime soon. Is there any congressional appetite for loosening those rules and at least letting these people get a checking account?
No, look, I think when it comes to marijuana, I don't know if many of you know this, marijuana is a Schedule I drug. That means the FDA has ranked it just as harmful as heroin and cocaine. Methamphetamine is Schedule II. I'm serious. Mushrooms, I think, are Schedule III. It's unbelievable that marijuana is at that point. But the problem is that there's only one research facility in our nation that's allowed to test marijuana for their government, in the University of Mississippi. I swear to you, just one. And so there is a lack of research going on to either deschedule it or get it off the scheduled drugs. And I think that's the first thing that has to happen, is you have to have the appropriate research to justify removing it. And to answer your question, unfortunately, I do not think there's an appetite right now to deal with that issue. I just don't see it. As you know, and as we've read in the paper, there's plenty of other issues going on in Washington, D.C. right now.
All right, another question over here in the corner.
Congressman, everyone in this room knows that the future of agriculture depends upon innovation and depends upon research investment by the government, and the president's proposed budget would devastate that research investment. So I wonder, just in general, what's your sense of the possible ramifications, or what the real potential of that budget is, and what you're trying to do about that?
Yeah, it's horrible. I believe the proposed budget, his skinny budget that he had, that the president proposed, cut of 21% to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That's shameful, if you ask me. Now, that budget was put forward when Sonny Perdue was not, it was nominated, but I don't think he has been confirmed at this point. I think Secretary Perdue is doing a good job, and I do believe we need people like that who can speak to the president. I mean, we're dealing with a guy from Queens. We're dealing with a guy who lives in a golden tower. I don't believe that he, as I recommended to all of you, has been out in a field and talk to growers. I think he needs to do that more, and he needs to understand the value of our agriculture as well as the value of immigration to our agriculture. And, you know, I was speaking with Senator Lindsey Graham. Once again, I'm sorry to get back to immigration, but I'm telling you, this is what it's about. Senator Lindsey Graham said, look, I think President Trump, I think his head is there, his heart is there, but his head is not when it comes to immigration. I think that's the same for agriculture. I mean, a lot of people in rural areas voted for Donald Trump. I think he'll listen to them, but people got to continue to speak to him, talk to him, make sure he understands the importance of investment in agriculture, investment in our rural areas, investment in AgTech, and hopefully immigration reform.
These questions don't get easier, do they? Okay, over here. Get a mic over here, all right?
For technology to help the agriculture industry, and for Silicon Valley in particular, we can always see the old story where you take a lot of jobs that are low skill, add technology, and you get fewer jobs, higher paid, higher skill. That's standard, okay? In the ag industry, we cannot escape seasonality. Okay, that is a huge factor affecting labor demand and what kind of people you bring in to be your labor force. Is there any technology focus to deseasonalize such that labor intake can be leveled instead of just, and you always want to add technology to raise the wage, and make it more valuable job content, but you also want to level it. Is there an emphasis on that to make the technology focus areas those that will level the labor demand?
And when you say level the labor field, explain?
The seasonality of agriculture, there's harvest time, there's seeding, the rest of that. You'll never get away from that.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you change the technology such that it is not as seasonal,
right,
okay, by emphasizing things that turn it into more steady employment, now that's a good thing. What are we doing to focus it that way?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that, but I think what you're getting at is sometimes they do, grow inside. There are, grows inside in warehouses.
You're on it. That's the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen that. But to be honest with you, I haven't seen that as the focus, because obviously if you look at the Salinas Valley, there's not many things inside. A couple marijuana grows, as we've heard, but in regards to our strawberries, our lettuce, our broccoli, our artichokes, our cauliflower, those are all grown outside, and therefore the focus on innovation should be on harvesting, if you ask me. But like I said, that's very difficult because it's rare that we've been spoiled with the labor force that we've had here in California. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's stunted our development in technology and mechanization. Mm-hmm. And now we're at a situation where something's got to happen. And so right now, the technology focus that I've seen is more on harvesting, more on making sure that we can pick those crops, because that's where it's labor intensive in actually picking them.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
All right, we're at the end of our time. I really want to thank you, Congressman, for being here. That is like having a best seat in the house here to hear this discussion. I want to thank you, audience, for really great questions. And I believe we're going to take a short break here, and then the next thing will be up will be our concluding demo day with our post-seed companies.
No, so let me just say, if I can, first of all, look, you don't know how much this means to me that you are getting together talking about this topic. And I cannot wait to go back to Washington and let them know that you have this many people interested in this subject. Because let me tell you, they are listening. And the more I speak to them, the more you speak to people in Washington, D.C., the more we will be able to get federal investment. I honestly believe that. So let me just say, I'm honored, I'm humbled to be in front of you, and I thank you for being here.